Now, it's time
Wow.
for
It's
our good
happening.
hands moments presented by Allstate. The Packers are in good hands with Jordan Love.
Ooh.
Cousin Jordan Love cooked a defense, a Cowboys defense that for a period this season we thought was one of the best units in the league. And the thing about Jordan Love that I find fascinating, this hasn't just been today. This
Yeah.
is an award that's being presented to him for his growth and his performance over the last 2 months. And it's something that's fascinating to me. And there's a million ways to go through the Jordan Love stuff and the Packers stuff and how they built this team. But sorry for the cheesy question. It's the only way I can think about it. Do you view Jordan Love and his performance today and really over the last 2 months as the emergence of a new superstar quarterback?
Yeah. I mean, what would you want from Jordan Love that he has not shown over the past 2 months? He can make any throw. He can single-handedly make plays out of structure. He can make plays in structure. He has a great arm. He's athletic. And he's doing it with, I believe, I'm going to look at the numbers when the season's over, but last time I checked, the youngest receiving core in
Mm-hmm.
at least the last 25 years, if not the
Gotta
youngest
be.
receiving core in the history of the National Football League. He hasn't had a great running game for most of the season because Aaron Jones has been hurt. The offensive line, his left tackle, has been hurt for the majority of the season. Like,
He hasn't had the support of a great defense for much of the season.
hasn't had the support of a great defense. That, like, when we talk about CJ Stroud, one of the things that's really stood out about CJ Stroud is he has a good line, but his receivers were not great on paper heading into the season. Nico Collins,
Mm-hmm.
has taken a major step forward. We'll talk about Tank Dell, took him, was really impressive as a rookie, but wasn't a guy who we saw as like, a Jamar Chase, T. Higgins situation for Joe Burrow in his second year. Like, he's done this without Christian Watson, his nominal top wideout for most of the season.
Yeah.
Like, all the things we would look for to kind of poke holes in a young quarterback and say, well, he can't do this or he can't do that. You can't poke those holes in Jordan Love. He is thriving, and he's the guy who's driving the offense. To me, I think he looks like a top 8 quarterback to me.
And he bounced back from a slow start to his career. Like, not only did he not play for the early years of his career, but he had a slow start to this season, his first year as a starter. It was kind of ugly, where I was feeling kind of nervous about assuming that he was going to be as good as I think we all thought he was. But then he turned the corner and he's been great. But all those things that we said that he didn't have for much of the season, he had all that stuff in this game. They had a running attack. They had an awesome defense. They had well-designed plays, play action with people wide open, but still, to your point, a couple of plays early on were him buying time, like flushing to the right, buying time in order to find, was it Dobbs a couple of times, I think, deep in the middle of the field. Yeah, and like you mentioned, the O-line was
touchdown
protecting
pass laser to Dobbs where he faded right and threw it back, and it's like, how did you even see that window?
I mean, that was the against the zero blitz. So that was kind of the pivotal point of the game, was the interception by Jair Alexander, which is a great play by him. I'm glad didn't get called a penalty because they were trying to call that a penalty. But then they responded by a hard count to get them to show that they were in zero. And then the design of that play, they motioned the receiver inside. So zero blitz, your responsibility is to make sure no one beats you inside. And that's the first responsibility because there's no help in there. They motion a guy inside, which then puts Gilmore in outside leverage and then run a post. And Jordan Love throws it off his back foot with a man jumping at him. Perfect pass in the back of the end zone. It was like the play of the day to me, the most impressive play that we saw.
By the way, like 4 different guys are open on that play. Like, it was the right decision, right throw, no question. But like 3 guys and the check down were open on that play against Zero, which probably tells you what kind of day it was for the Cowboys.
But he was impressive today. They were incredibly impressive. But I think Jordan Love, it was nice to see him have this moment where it was a flawless game. It felt like to him. And again, the Cowboys didn't put a lot of pressure on him, so he didn't have to do any miraculous comebacks, but he did exactly what was expected, or probably a little more than was expected of him in his first playoff start.
So can I ask you guys a question? Because, by the way, they didn't even get the ball to Jaden Reed, who had been his top receiver for a lot of the season. Like, he didn't even like a target for the first 3 quarters. And this wasn't a prep for question, so you guys legitimately might not have an answer. But what happened to Jordan Love? Because it seemed like the first 8 weeks of the season, up until Thanksgiving, he was sort of a write-off. And it was like, oh, he's talented. He's not accurate. He's not good. Like, they're going to move on from him. And then seemingly overnight, he became awesome. Is there anything that you've seen that can sort of explain this, or is this an anomaly where his true self just took 8 weeks of football to come out?
I think what happened was people stopped paying attention to the Packers for about 2 months, and then
Yep.
everyone watched that Thanksgiving, and they're like, "Oh, he's good. What happened? Things changed." Like, I do think he made strides in terms of his confidence, in terms of his, how much he trusts his receivers on routes. I think in terms of his, his decisiveness, like he gets the ball out quicker. I think he's, he didn't have that or as many of those like back foot throws in his pocket earlier in the season, and I think he trusts his arm a little bit more. But I think there's just that general feeling of like, this dude had not played football for 3 years in front of live pass rush reps. And like, it was going to take time for him to get to a point where he was more comfortable, maneuvering, his footwork on the pocket, getting more consistent. Like, all that stuff happens with opportunities. And so as the year went on, he got better because he had more chances to get better.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. The idea that he hadn't played in 3 years is something that we would have we would have lost our minds if it was a quarterback that we knew was good and then set out for an entire season. We might have been like, oh my gosh, how can you expect this guy to come back and be good? He hadn't played football, like real legitimate competitive football in a real game. He's never done it in NFL, but he hadn't done it in 3 years. So maybe that's part of it, because I do remember thinking that his accuracy was one of his superpowers. And early on, like Bill said, I was one of those people that was like, all right, it's a team that I don't got to check back in on. And then I had to like do my homework to catch up once the Thanksgiving game happened. I was like, oh, they're good now. Let's figure out what's going on with Jordan Love. And then you're like, oh my gosh, he's actually really good. And it might just been like, got to get warmed up, get comfortable with this.
Yeah. Yeah. I also want to point out, though, they did lose to the Giants and Tommy Cutlets 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. So I think like in our heads, we have this idea of like, okay, he was bad, and then Thanksgiving he was great, and he's been great since. He wasn't great against the Giants, and the Giants are not a great defense, great football team. Like he's been
also almost lost to Bryce Young and the Panthers. Worth noting.
Not ideal, but like doesn't matter now. You won the playoff game. No one remembers. No one besides losers like me remember what you did against the Giants in Week 14. So you're good, Jordan Love, and he's gonna get probably a lot of money this offseason, which hey, good for him.
So I got one other question about this, because we're in an era now where people are largely smarter about the rookie quarterback contract. And it's like you have a cost-controlled asset that you can take at the top of the first round. You have to play him over the course of that contract. That's the entire value of this. But Jordan Love, there's a chance this was the best thing that ever happened to him, right? Do you think, like, how much value do you think that this will, or how much stock do you put into the Jordan Love thing, that this could change the way other quarterbacks are developed, or it was the right decision, or it's just a case-by-case basis?
I think it's probably a smart thing to do. I mean, you've heard me make my arguments many times in the past that I think more than anything, young quarterbacks need time, and they need time to add new things to their game, to get comfortable and develop new parts of their game. And so many young quarterbacks, I believe, are ruined because they're put in bad situations where they do not have the support to learn and add to their game. However, the pressure is the pressure. And the situation is the situation. So if you are a team that's drafting a quarterback in the first round, means you probably don't have one. They're going to get put in. I don't care how well this works for Jordan Love. There's going to be maybe some team. And again, for them, they drafted him while they had a quarterback on the roster that went on to win 2 MVPs afterwards. So if people are going to do that, then maybe it happens going forward. But I think most teams are not. And you could argue that they shouldn't have drafted him then. They should have used that pick on someone could have helped them to win a Super Bowl. I think right now that might be a bad argument to make because they hit on another quarterback. Yeah, I mean, but I'm sure they would trade for another Super Bowl. Why are you looking at it like laughing like it's crazy? An idea that they could have used that first round pick on something to help them win at the time when they were a game away from getting to the Super Bowl in back-to-back seasons.
It wasn't going to happen.
Okay, maybe it wasn't, but it's a reasonable argument to make.
I guess how can I even say that with certainty? Oh yeah, this hypothetical trade. Sorry, it was really dumb.
It's fine. It's late.
It's late. I the point I made was Jordan Love got better as he got more reps. So maybe he would have got better getting those reps in year one. Maybe he wouldn't have had the identical Aaron Rodgers footwork on his jump pass that he has after 3 years. Maybe it took him 2.5 years to master that. I don't know. But like, I think Dominique's point is really salient in that if you don't have the right infrastructure around a guy, whether it's year 1 or year 4, they're not going to work. So I think often we have quarterbacks drafted in year 1 who get thrust into situations, not because there's the right pieces around them and because they can develop, but just because a coach thinks he's going to get fired and needs a spark. And that does not lead to successful things. So I don't think it's like I think teams need to be realistic. And I know teams are very famous about saying, oh yeah, listen, this guy's going to sit for a year. We're going to rebuild his mechanics. And then he's in like week 3. That's never a good process. But the process of knowing when you want to get a guy in there and having the right pieces around him that he can thrive, like CJ Stroud has done this year in terms of the offensive line with the Texans, I think there's no reason to sit CJ Stroud for 3 years just because you might have a guy in front of him.
Is there a team that would be more fun to win the Super Bowl than the Green Bay Packers right now? Like, I just personally think that would be, it's unlikely. They probably won't get past the 49ers, but it would make me
You don't think
smile.
the Lions would be more fun than the Cowboys?
I mean, all right, maybe, I don't know. Maybe you're following different storylines this season than I am.
I mean, let's be real. For the sake of this podcast, one of the funniest things, because it would just break Bill's brain, would be the Steelers winning the Super Bowl this year.
That wouldn't just break Bill's brain. Like, I'm sure your brain would short circuit also.
It'd be seeping out of my nose.
We'd all be confused.
Seeing Mason Rudolph hoist the Lombardi. Someone's going to bonk him with the Lombardi.
Oh gosh. We didn't talk about Belichick to the Cowboys. Yeah. Not that we need to, but we can move on.
Happen? You think it's gonna happen?
Hell no, I don't think it's gonna happen.
Hell
you don't.
It's gonna happen.
You're saying hell no, it's not. You think there's no chance it's gonna happen?
I think there's a chance that it could happen. I just have a hard time imagining that either Jerry Jones or Bill Belichick would like to sign up for that. It doesn't seem like something that Bill Belichick would be interested in participating in the Dallas Cowboys experience, and Jerry Jones is never, since Bill Parcells, seemed like he's the one who wants to go for the coach that's going to get more credit than him.